guys.
Wow, we packed them in. I think it must be the hat.
Exactly. How many of you guys are restaurateurs? Cool. And how many you guys just have one restaurant? Cool. So it seems to be most of you guys are single operator restaurants. That's awesome. Love you guys.
So a lot to cover, Kimbal. Maybe let's start with your story. I mean, you're in business. You're giving back locally. I mean, you got a great story. Tell your story, please.
Yeah, my story starts a long time ago. I grew up in South Africa. I always loved food. I loved the joy of cooking, and I was encouraged to do it by my parents. But from about the age of 12, what I learned was really powerful about food was when I cooked, everyone sat down. And I have a very busy family, as you probably know. And getting them to sit down at a meal was an unusual thing. But if I cooked, we'd all sit down and we would talk and we'd connect. And I took that through with me to university. I still to this day cook for my kids. I love food as my first passion. But in the middle of the 90s, I got drawn into the internet, which was a very exciting time. And I couldn't really not do it, so I got involved in the internet. We built the first company that does maps and door-to-door directions, if you ever heard of that. So quite a fun little stamp to put on the internet. And what we did was once we sold the company, it was in 1999, I kind of had a chance to look back and say, is my love technology or is my love food? And it really was food. And I went to New York. I learned how to cook at the French Culinary Institute in New York, a super intense cooking school. I came from being this hotshot in Silicon Valley to being screamed at by chefs who were 5'1" for 6 hours a day. It was funny, and I just took it because it was so important to me to learn how to cook. And it was wonderful. I really did. I didn't know what I didn't know. People who you guys are all restaurateurs. Cooking is both a skill and an art, and getting that skill right was so powerful for me through the school. But what was most impactful for me was right after I graduated. I graduated just before 9/11, and I woke up to the sounds of the planes hitting the building. I was just a few blocks from the World Trade Center, and it was one of the most difficult, but also one of the most amazing experiences of my life, because I saw the towers fall. I literally ran with my wife uptown and camped out in my mother's apartment. And my mother's a well-known dietitian, and she was asked to go cook for the firefighters. And she said, well, I don't really cook, but my son does. He just graduated and could go down. And out of millions of volunteers that were trying to volunteer, I was one of the few that could cook for the firefighters every single day for 6 weeks. And it was amazing to watch these firefighters come in from these giant piles of melting metal. And we'd feed them real food that we cooked that day, fresh food we prepared, same kind of food I do in our restaurants today. We know where the food came from. It's delicious and nutritious. And they would connect with each other, and they would go right back out into these giant piles of melting metal to go save American lives. It was that sort of profound experience that I said, I can't just do food as a hobby. I really have to do it as a business, because I want to marry my passion and my purpose together. And so I went to Colorado, did a road trip around the U.S. and opened the kitchen in Boulder, Colorado. And it was a restaurant not intended to kickstart the farm-to-table movement, which we were credited with. It was really a restaurant with our intention to use tasty food. And what we found with the challenges with industrial food, especially in 2004, was it was really designed to be shipped a long way. So our products were coming from as far away as China to a little town in Colorado. And we just wanted to find out if we could get locally produced fresh food. It was actually quite an unusual thing. Farmers were not comfortable selling to restaurants. They had their farmer stand and they had their CSAs, but restaurants were a very, very small part of their business. And for them, it was about trust. They wanted to trust us, and they wanted us to build a relationship with them. And we very, very carefully did that. It took about 1.5 years before we could open the kitchen. But when we did, we really hit a nerve. People wanted to know their farmer. They wanted to know where their food came from. They wanted to support their local farmer, and it also tasted better. And so those combined together really put the kitchen on the map as still today considered one of America's top 100 restaurants. And it's a very simple restaurant. The food is very similar to what I cook for those firefighters. It's just sautéed salmon with a little salt and olive oil and some local greens. The salmon is from a fishmonger in Alaska that we've worked with for years. The prices are also not too high. The kitchen, though, we wanted to create a more affordable concept, so we created Next Door, which is our restaurant, which the average price on the menu is $10. You can get away, including a drink, you can leave the restaurant for $15, $16. And that was really important to us to create something that was more affordable for our consumer. And I'm proud to say I believe we're opening our 10th restaurant on Thursday in Colorado, our 10th Next Door. So I know the journey of going from 1 to a few and now to 10, and it's an exciting journey, but it's quite different. It's quite a learning process. And so the other thing we did in 2004 was we were a very successful restaurant, and I had already been financially successful, so I said, hey, let's redirect the profits and put it into local schools and help kids grow vegetables in their schools. So they improve their test scores by 15 points on a 100-point scale, double their intake of fruits and vegetables. And so we would do that. We did 2 schools a year, building the traditional wooden beds, but we really struggled with it. And one thing that happened to me, which was another incredible event for me, was I went down a ski hill in 2010, and I broke my neck. Broke it here at C6 and C7. I was paralyzed on my left. It's one of those crazy, it's hard to describe experiences where you have no feeling at all. It's no pain. It's just no feeling. And it was actually the most terrifying feeling or experience I've ever had. The doctor said they could fix me, but it took 3 days for surgery to happen. So for 3 days, I looked back at my life, and I looked at what I was doing. At that point, we had the kitchen, and we were working with school gardens to a small degree. But I told myself if they fixed me that I would focus on food, and I'd grow the businesses and reach kids across America with our school gardens and make a more affordable version of the kitchen that could reach every American. And I woke up on Wednesday morning, and they said they'd fix me. It was quite anticlimactic because I had 2 months horizontal. I couldn't walk still. But for those 2 months, my mind spun, and we created this new learning garden. As you can see, a beautiful raised bed that is organically shaped, beautiful outdoor classroom that we do in partnership with Gordon Food Service in Detroit. We build 100 of these at a time, and we were doing 2 per year before. We now do 200 a year at Big Green, our nonprofit. So it's my joke, of course, with breaking your neck is, if not for the physical trauma, I highly recommend the psychological awakening. It really changed my life for the better. And I am so proud of our team. I'm so proud of our partners like Gordon Food Service. We're growing Next Door. We're growing Big Green. We're over 250,000 kids reached every day. We've also now launched a new company to help young farmers get into the business. And the company is called Square Roots. It's based in Brooklyn. And what we do is we do indoor farming. So each farmer gets a container, which is the equivalent of 2 to 3 acres of outdoor land. And it's extremely cool. So if you're ever in Brooklyn, you've got to go check it out. And what they're able to do is grow food for their community, delicious, real food. And when they graduate from our program, we set them up with a loan in partnership with USDA to go do their own farm after the fact. As it turns out, they want to keep doing what we're doing, so which has been pretty cool to see. But we're 18 months in, and it has been just a super exciting ride. So that's my story. I'm sure we can dig in more with more questions.
Yeah, let's dig into it. So restaurants, Big Green indoor learning gardens, Square Roots indoor shipping containers. maybe the restaurants. Let's start there.
Sure.
You and I have been talking about transparency a lot. We just launched this new Clear Choice program that gives our customers the ability to look at over 6,000 items right now. But talk about how important transparency is in your business for your customers.
It is our major differentiator. So the fact that we know our farmer has brought, we break our customers into three categories. We have customers, which are, the three categories are customers, fans, and fanatics. Customers are folks that join our restaurant mostly because someone else asked them to come. And for those folks, you got to have a great burger. You got to have a great salad. Bubba's got to have a great burger. Mary's got to have a great salad. But the fans are the ones that make that reservation, or they decide to bring the table, bring that group of people to the restaurant. And so we really care very much about our fans. And they will have an emotional connection with where the farmers come from. They'll have an emotional connection with what we do. What we do is critical to them. But the fanatics are the ones that will shout from the hilltops about how important it is to go to your restaurant because of the farmer that you're supporting or because of the sustainability ethos that you're doing. The mission of Next Door resonates with fanatics, and those fanatics are your friend. They will make sure everyone knows about your restaurant. They will keep it in the conversation. I know what it's like to be a restaurant owner, and I've gone 15, 16 years now. I've gone through the sort of cycle, where everyone loves your restaurant, and then what was that restaurant again? And then everyone loves your restaurant, and what was that restaurant again? And constantly trying to get yourself back into that conversation. We look after those fanatics, and we look after them with farm tours. We look after them with special events so that they are constantly aware of the amazing things we're doing. And the other side of the sword with fanatics is if they will double check. They will check everything. So if we say we work with Fisher Farms out of Indiana, and we say we're buying the whole cow, we better be buying the whole cow from Fisher Farms, Indiana, because they will go find out. And so it cuts both ways. But what we found is by doing what we say and saying what we do, which is our experience with Gordon Food Service, which is why I think we get along so well, it has been a real boon for our business.
So we had a chance to visit the Thrive booth today.
Yeah.
Did you meet the?
I met Jose. Yeah, totally, and George.
Yeah, I think they're here. We have two farmers from Guatemala. Please stand up. These guys got in at 1 a.m. Give them a round of applause. So this is a new partnership that we announced yesterday with Thrive.
Yep.
And kind of sits right into this know your farmer, know the source.
Well, the old way of doing distribution was, you need many, many middlemen to connect with a Thrive farmer. And with today's technology, there really isn't a reason for it other than, okay, you definitely need a truck. So someone, either you do the truck or the farmer does the truck or someone else has to do the truck.
And a refrigerator and freezer on the truck too.
Yes, right? So exactly, whole chain. But that stuff's all doable, and if obviously there is a role for those for the transportation, but it doesn't actually have to be dealt with by a middleman. It could be done by one of the partners, and it certainly isn't necessary for multiple middlemen to be in the middle there. And so I think that is quite an exciting opportunity, especially with your Clear Choice product, where you guys can see a direct relationship that Gordon Food Service has with a farmer, and put the Thrive coffee in your restaurant and have that story to tell your customer, because it's that story that gets those fanatics coming back and making sure your restaurant is always at the top of everyone's minds.
So that story is important. How do you train your chefs, your staff about that story? How do they bring it to life on the menu?
Yeah, we do a lot of training. Our teams we're very proud of our mission training, which includes what we do with the farmers, as well as hospitality, quality of food. We have a benefit of the fact that we've been around for a while. Most of the folks that apply for employment already know our story pretty well. They are, frankly, our fanatics. And we have that benefit of already having the story out there has really helped us, so that when they come in, we have to kind of just guide them on what to say versus we can't let them run wild, because they get very excited, and then sometimes they're talking to the table for 15 minutes. You're like, come on, guys, this is only a 10-second story, because sometimes customers really do want to dig in. Yeah. But what we found is getting your mission out there, you'll start attracting people to your team that want to be part of that mission.
So your customers, multi-locations, We talked about transparency. What else are your customers thinking about looking at? What are you thinking about from new things that you're bringing forth?
Yeah, so I think we were very excited about our modern American burger menu. So burgers are a sacred item to me. Like, you've got to do it really well if you do it. And we have a kick-ass cheeseburger, locally raised from a farmer, a rancher that you know in the area. In Colorado, we buy the whole cow from Roger Koberstein. The prime cuts go to our higher-end restaurants, and the burger meat goes to our next-door restaurants. And we just had to make a decision on whether we would include so then we also have the 50-50 burger, which is half mushroom, half beef. We have the beet burger, which is a delicious vegetarian burger. And we have a salmon burger from our salmon fishmonger, where we know the farmer, we know the fishmonger. And we just had to make a decision on whether to include the Impossible Burger, which is was quite challenging for us, to be honest. It tastes good. It's a nice tasting burger, but it doesn't have a farmer that we can connect with. And so to make up for that, I went to Impossible Burger headquarters, met with their teams, toured their facilities and how they produce this burger patty, and it's good, clean, real food. I actually had them have every ingredient frozen for me, and I ate it frozen because it breaks down if it's not frozen. And I ate every single ingredient separately, and I go, okay, so I can still understand where this is coming from. I can still represent this to our guest as a trusted product, even though it's not. I mean, it originates from a farm, but really the producer is Impossible. So that was an interesting challenge for us, and it's a delicious burger, and our guests love it. And so we've been testing it out, but as of Thursday, we're going to put it on the menu permanently. And we're kind of calling it our modern American burger menu, where the way modern Americans are eating right now is they want their burger. Some of them want a delicious salmon burger. Some of them want half meat, half mushroom. Some of them want locally raised beef. Some of them want a vegan burger like an Impossible. But you got to have it all so that you can deliver to the modern American guest.
So, square roots.
Yeah.
I know this is a big passion of yours, farmers, farming. Let's dig into that a little bit. What inspired you to go after this Square Roots project?
Yeah, so I see farming as one of the great opportunities of our time to go figure out what to do with this amazing breadbasket country we have. And I would go visit in Iowa, Indiana and Iowa, mostly Iowa, just because that's where it seemed to be most of the opportunity. And what I learned was the land is quite locked up. In other words, while you could choose to farm something other than corn and soybeans, the government will punish you if you do that. And so if you're in your 70s or 80s, you're just not in the zone to innovate that way. And you don't get paid much, but you would lose money the other way, farming real food. And it was a real struggle for me. And then on the other side, I would talk to young farmers and I'd say, guys, let's go to Iowa and let's buy some farmland and try something different. And it was a really tough sell. They want to go to New York or Detroit or Grand Rapids or Chicago, or even Des Moines. They want to be in the city center. And how do we sort of tie those two together, where young farmers want to be farmers, they want to grow real food for their community, but they also want to be in the urban centers. And so I toured the world looking at indoor farming to understand what was going on there. Japan, because of their nuclear disaster a few years ago, indoor farming is the primary way they farm now, because it's trusted food. It's a totally clean food, doesn't touch the soil, and that's a uniquely terrible situation, but you really don't want to grow food in that soil for many, many years. And so that's a booming industry in Japan. In the Netherlands, that little country, I mean, it's probably half the size of Michigan, and it's the same weather system, exports more food than any other country in the world except America. Wow. All done from indoor farming. So it's an incredible business if you can figure it out. And so we came across this modern day technology. The technology is changing every day, literally. But to grow food indoors in a container using modern day lights, where you could just do phenomenal things. And we have some of the most delicious, top-selling product in New York today. Should I tell the story of Josh with the basil?
Oh yeah, got to tell the story on the basil.
Yeah.
Did you bring basil or?
We're going to bring it tomorrow. Exactly. So when you have total control of your environment, so these are containers as you see in the screen, you can control everything. You can control the mineral content in the water, so you've got to match the soil that might be on the ground. You can control oxygen, the sunrise, sunset, etc. And one of our farmers a couple of years ago, he was an engineer by training, just started talking to chefs, and one after the other he would hear a chef saying, there was this basil from 2009 in Italy that really, if you could do something, if you could do something like that, and he just kept hearing that over and over and over again. And it's this famous vintage, and it's not common for basil to have a vintage. It's usually basil's basil, but this particular vintage, just for chefs, the flavor profile, the tannins, and the taste was just so special. So what he did was he went to the weather system, where the data, where the weather systems are stored, and he saw what time the sun went up, what days did it rain, what time did the sun set, what were the oxygen levels, what were the carbon dioxide levels, what was the humidity on an hour-by-hour basis, how bright was the sun shining. I mean, he could get all of this data, and he recreated the summer of 2009 in this container, the summer of 2009 in Italy. And he created the most delicious basil in the entire city of New York, and went from being an unknown farmer to being sold out across New York City. And right now, in fact, we're working with Gordon Food to bring that 2009 basil to you guys, because it is now so popular that when you guys try it and you consider it for your restaurant, you'll understand why. It's a different basil that just pops in ways that other basil doesn't do it. And we're able to do that because we control the environment entirely.
It's not in stock yet, folks. So I've been in these containers. I mean, they're amazing. So this container, one container, how many acres of product will it do in a year's time?
We're getting better and better. So it started out with 2 acres of product per year in a container that size. We're now almost at 4 acres of product in the same container. And that's how fast the technology is evolving. And
then talk about what type of products that you grow in there.
Yeah, we can actually grow anything. I mean, we've grown tomatoes, beets, carrots, eggplant. We haven't found something other than maybe potatoes. We probably couldn't grow potatoes just because they're grown underground. But pretty much we can grow anything. What we found to be the most delicious are the herbs like basil. Mint is another incredible product. We have some fun ones like really hot peppers we can do. And then I think the most exciting one we want to do is, which we've grown already, we just need to figure out how to do it at a bigger scale, is we want to grow strawberries, summer strawberries. We want to grow them in January in New York.
What about Michigan?
And Michigan.
And Michigan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On a day like today, getting the most delicious summer strawberry you can imagine, that's what you can do now with modern day technology.
That'd be cool.
Imagine as a chef in your restaurants getting a Michigan summer strawberry on a day like today. Pretty amazing.
So in New York, you're selling these to restaurants, retail outlets. What are they doing on their menu? Like, how are they advertised?
Yeah,
how are they bringing it to life?
So it's very important, and this comes back to the Clear Choice service that Gordon Foods is doing, is not only are they saying that it's square roots basil or it's square roots greens, it'll be the farmer's name, Josh Aliber, and what time it was harvested this morning. It's literally just a subway stop away from the restaurant. So it is amazing how exciting it is for a customer and a restaurateur to say, this was harvested this morning for you, my guest. And that's where the fanatics just, absolutely go crazy. And we bring them to the farm. We do farm tours with them, and they get to see how it's grown. And that's kind of how we build this groundswell of excitement around the product that we're growing. But the truth is, it also tastes much better because it was harvested this morning. It's grown for the chef. It tastes so much better, and it has all of these other elements to it.
Yeah, I tried one of the cherry tomatoes.
Amazing, right?
Incredible. And so the container, why the container? Why a shipping container?
So we chose this format because we wanted to inspire a generation of young farmers. And so if we do these containers, we can have one farmer run a container. So it's 3 acres of produce. That's a lot of work, but it's doable by one farmer. And what we found was another advantage. So let me go back to the farmer. What's great about having the farmer involved is when you're putting it on your menu, you can say, Mary Smith grew this for me. The emotional connection matters to the customer. It also matters to you guys. And that becomes part of what we're able to do. The other thing we learned, though, was every product needs its own recipe of light and oxygen and humidity and carbon dioxide. And so a farmer, if the farmer gets too big, then the product starts to degrade in quality because you have to have the same climate for basil as you have for mint. And it's not too bad, but it's not as good. And so by having a farmer dedicate themselves to basil and a farmer dedicate themselves to mint, a farmer dedicate themselves to we have one farmer doing sorrel, which is pops in your mouth and like it's almost like a chef most chefs don't know how to use sorrel, so they have to use it very sparingly because it's such pops so much. But it needs a different climate as well. So these containers have two powerful competitive advantages. One is we have the farmer, so it's very personal, emotional connection. And then the other is those farmers can really optimize for the most delicious, nutritious, and as affordable as possible product because they're focusing on one thing.
So, last question, how do you see what you're doing coming to life within our supply chain at Gordon Food Service?
Sure.
Is it applicable?
I love it. So I visited the new Gordon Food Store on Michigan, is that right?
Michigan and Diamond,
Yeah.
yes.
Has anyone been there? It's only been open a couple of days. Anyway, you should go check it out because it is where the future of grocery is headed, where 90% of that store is fresh or prepared foods, bakery, prepared foods, and then fresh produce. And what I loved was the life on the floor, which you just don't see in grocery stores anymore, and it's I think what people really are craving for. One of the coolest things was a guacamole stand where you go pick your avocados and you walk over to the guacamole stand and they make guacamole to order. And they sold 210 guacamole containers yesterday. It was the busiest SKU in the whole grocery store. I sort of see a Square Roots farmer coming onto the floor of Gordon Foods and doing something fun. So let's say there's an actual ice cream section in this store. Let's do a mint ice cream. Bring your mint. We'll mix it fresh to order with some vanilla, and that's a great ice cream. We'll do it with a sorbet. You could do, with the basil, you could do a fresh pesto. You could also do a caprese salad that is made. The customer in the store picks the basil and says, "I want to do something with it right now." It's about bringing to life what's going on in those stores, and I walked into that store and it just felt totally different to any other grocery store.
We couldn't get you out of there last night.
I know, exactly.
It was a lot
Is
of
Tim
fun.
in the audience?
No, Tim's probably in the store making
He's
guacamole.
working, yeah. Tim on your team is, he's incredible.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's shift gears. Let's talk about Big Green. I just love the culture and I just love your passion on this project and giving back to the community. Talk about how that started and kind of what do you see as the vision of that?
Yeah, so Big Green came out of my desire to have an impact at scale with learning gardens, with school gardens. So school gardens before we came along were made out of wood. In fact, we were doing those 2 a year, made out of wood, usually in the corner of the schoolyard. The facilities department would usually put a fence around it, and it would be hard to maintain, hard to teach in. Some teachers would still do it. I mean, we had a teacher in Chicago named Mrs. Wells, incredible teacher, and for 22 years before we came along, had a garden in the corner of the schoolyard with a fence around it, with a locked fence. She would go get the key. She would take her kids, who were special needs kids, to crossing a dangerous part of Chicago, crossing the school grounds, opening that garden and teaching them science primarily through the growing of food. So experiential learning, getting these kids to learn better. Nothing's better than experiential learning, but you get them outside as well. you get them growing food, you get the double whammy of nutrition as well. We came to her a few years ago, and we said to her, well, there's this new thing called a learning garden, and she almost broke down in tears. So what we do differently is we raise them up. As you can see, they're beautiful outdoor classrooms. So they're not on the ground or very low down, so Mrs. Wells could teach standing up. We don't allow a fence around them, so no fence is allowed. And we move it right outside the classroom, between the classrooms and the playground. So teachers can access it really easily, and during recess, the kids can use it as an extension of the playground. And what now Mrs. Wells does, one of her kids is named Andy, and he is a special needs kid, and he uses lollipop sticks with the little seed dots on the lollipop stick, and measures out where the seeds are. And he's the most diligent. He's the best student in the garden. And when he comes back into class, now Mrs. Wells will keep him out there for 90 minutes a day. I mean, it's like she loves this garden. But when he comes back into class, he has to learn out of a textbook again. But she can say to Andy, remember how good you were outside? Bring that confidence, bring that diligence inside it. You have the skills, you have the power to learn and be the person you're meant to be. And it's like teachers like Mrs. Wells that just get me up in the morning, and we work hard every day to get a new learning garden into our cities across America. I'm proud to say we're over 530 now. Thank you to Gordon Foods for supporting 34 schools in Detroit. Our goal is to get to 100 there. And any of you Gordon Food folks that have already volunteered, thank you so much. Every single build we've had in Detroit has had a Gordon Food Service volunteer, which tells me the spirit, the can-do spirit, and the spirit of giving in your company.
We have great people. We do. Can we go back to that picture of myself and that teacher? I just want to talk about that story. So before we got involved in Detroit, you sent me down to Memphis.
Oh, right.
And so I went down there for the day with a few others, and it was just an amazing day. This teacher I had a conversation with, and the school you sent me to was in a food desert, right?
Yeah.
And so she told me this like riveting story. I mean, she squared me up, face to face, and she said, "Let me tell you what it's like living in a food desert." And she spoke about, there's no choices in the food desert. The kids don't eat any fresh product. A mother has to take 2 buses to the grocery store. Just an amazing story. You have a big passion on this food desert. Maybe talk more about that.
Yeah, it's an interesting and sad problem. And I'm glad to hear you're putting stores in food deserts now, and I'm hearing they're doing
in
quite
Detroit,
well.
we put one, yep.
Yeah, we have this the American sort of changing demographics that happened over the past sort of 20 to 30 years, where people left the city and they went out into the suburbs, and there was this downtown might still have been okay, but there was this sort of big empty patch between downtown and the suburbs, and it's happened in Indianapolis to a terrible degree in Detroit, in Chicago, and the grocery stores said, well, we don't think people want real food here or fresh food, so we're gonna move out as well. And it has been a total travesty for these communities, because now they are forced to shop at a 7-Eleven, which is more expensive. There's less choice. It's all packaged, unless they take that 2-bus trip to a store. And in Chicago, the mayor worked with Whole Foods to put a Whole Foods in Englewood, extremely successful store, again in a food desert. You guys just put one in Detroit, in downtown Detroit, which is coming back in a big way. But when you made that decision, you probably didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And we opened a restaurant in Indianapolis in the sort of middle area, so the downtown and the suburbs, and we did it in this middle area. And it's our most successful restaurant opening ever. Not just it's a next door, but it's not our most successful next door. It's our most successful of any restaurant we've opened. The demand for real food and the lack of supply is a travesty, but it's also something for us to acknowledge. We can go in and solve it, and it's good for business too.
So I think I'm going to move to some questions. I've got a few up here. Is there a few more also? Okay, so we'll start with this right here. These came in, and okay, here's the first one. Yep, right to the gardens. I'm interested in bringing gardens to my school district. How do I start?
Which school
This is
district?
a question. Well, it doesn't say which one.
Okay, if you're interested in bringing it to your school district, go to the Big Green website, biggreen.org, and you can find out the application process. If we are in your area, then you just need to apply for a learning garden. And if we're not in your area, then what you'll do is, through that process, start a conversation with our team, and we'll find out where you are, and we'll add you guys to the pipeline of cities we'll start to work on.
Oh, here's a good one. What's the story behind the hat?
Okay. Good one. It's a funny story. So it must have been 5 years ago. I've been for many years now, 15 years at least, but for many years I would go to farms, and I'd spend two days of the week on farms. And I was down in Memphis, which is super hot in the summer, and going across to Arkansas, and then down to Texas, and just kind of trying to understand the opportunities around farms, but also working on supply chain for our restaurants. And I would borrow a hat from the farmers. And this, I'm a charming South African who doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and they'd be like, okay, fine, you can use the hat. But as I got to know them, that's actually not cool. You don't borrow someone's hat. It's like borrowing a pet. And so one day the farmer said, look, we got to break this so you can't borrow our hat anymore, but we're going to take you shopping for a hat. And so we went to Allen's Boots in Austin, and they outfitted me with this hat. I've only had 3 hats in those 5 years. They're all the same shape. It's this hat. This one is a brand new one, but I've had 3 more before this. And I started wearing it, and there's a reason they exist. They're great. This is a very simple, practical farmer's hat. When I would go on farms, it all kind of worked, and everyone was happy. But then when I started, I do on Instagram, I do photos and stuff. Then I'd come and meet folks without the hat, and people would be like, "Where's the hat?" and we're not good enough for the hat. What's going on here? And so slowly but surely, I started wearing it more and more often, and now I think it's kind of a part of me. I also love that it was bought with me by farmers. I think that is so cool, and I love that it's a working Texas hat. It's like a $75 hat that is just, it's what the farmers wear. So I think it's really cool.
It looks good.
Thank you.
I was going to bring mine, but I don't have a hat. I need a hat. So at dinner last night, we were having fun talking about Halloween.
Yeah.
Talking about what candies we give out. You were talking about vegetables in your house. There's a question: how do you get your kids to eat vegetables? So,
got it. Yeah, good question.
I want to hear your story.
Yeah, so I have a rule with vegetables is, first of all, if I don't think they taste good, it's okay. You don't have to eat them. And that's unfortunately a reality. Like, we do have to cook our vegetables well. If a steak is poorly cooked, I don't want to eat that either. But if we overcook our broccoli or something and it's just very kind of mushy, I wouldn't want to eat that either. But if I think it tastes good, then my kids have to try at least 2 bites. And they don't have to eat all of their vegetables. They have to try 2 bites. And it doesn't matter if they tried it even the night before, if it's green beans or it's Brussels sprouts or if it's cauliflower or broccoli, they have to try 2 bites. And it's amazing how over the course of my kid's lifetime now, even my 6-year-old daughter will eat anything. Now, will she love everything? There's something she loves more than others, but she will eat those 2 bites every time. And I watch her start to, like green beans, for example, she just turned on in her head. She'll just eat an entire plate of green beans. But 2 months ago, she was like, no way am I touching that. And she has to always have 2 bites. And if she still doesn't want to eat it after 2 bites, then we try again the next day. But it's amazing how just getting them to try it, and it just trains their taste buds to enjoy that flavor and being cooked well. It's very important. As restaurateurs, we know if we cook vegetables well, customers eat them all day long. But at home, a little bit of training around how to cook vegetables well, I think will go a long way to getting your kids to eat them.
At my house, my wife kind of sneaks the vegetables in food that we eat.
Right.
Does that happen to your house too?
She does, yeah. My wife does this once a year. She'll do this basil pesto. She's mostly vegetarian, and she'll do this basil pesto dish that summertime from our garden, and it's a very decadent dish. But there's actually no meat in it. It's olive oil and green beans and basil and walnuts with pasta, and you wouldn't think there are actually vegetables in there because it's just so decadent with Parmesan cheese and olive oil and stuff. There's ways to do that, but I still think grilled asparagus or carrots or sautéed Brussels sprouts, they taste great. Cook well, they taste great.
Now, you threw me for a loop last night because I thought you were going to have a full plate of vegetables.
Right, exactly. I was like, thank God I get to have a steak.
So we got to close here in a couple minutes here. I've got just a couple questions. I think this question would be on the mind of everybody here today. What message do you want to leave our operators? What should they be thinking about for the future as they run their business?
Yeah, I think for restaurateurs, really thinking in terms of real food, so as fresh as possible. I've actually lost my luster around organic. We are probably one of the biggest organic restaurant buyers in the country. But much of our organic product is shipped in from as far away as China. I mean, it's just crazy that we ship it in from around the world instead of growing it locally. So for me, it's much more about fresh, knowing your farmer. So local, but there are some farmers you can get to know that are, we work with salmon fishmongers in Alaska. To us, that's as valuable as a local farmer in Michigan. But knowing your farmer is critical. Bringing that real food ethos into your menu. And my mother has a really nice phrase, which is the plate colorful? And if the plate is colorful, you've probably done your job. Because in order to have color, you got to have green, a little red, and then you still have your meat and potatoes, but you bring a little color into the like that's a great dish there. Bring a little color onto your plate. It's what American consumers are resonating with today. They want that color. They want to feel like they're being nourished. And I think you guys should really work hard to do more of that. If you're already doing it, do even more of it. Great.
Kimbal, it's been an honor to get to know you and work directly with you and your team. Thank you for everything that you're doing to bring life into the food service industry and everything that you do personally serving others. So thank you very much.
And hold on, before you close, I want to thank Rich and Gordon Food Service for being the most incredible partner, both in Square Roots as well as Big Green. You guys are a huge company, and you do what you say what you do, and every step of the partnership has just been fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it? Thank you.